The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around my own partner's wrists, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent, suffocating basement. And as I looked into her eyes, I didn't see the detective I trusted with my life for 10 years. I saw a terrified stranger, convinced she was about to be consumed by a force that didn't technically exist. Before we rewind the tape to see how a standard homicide investigation in the rain-soaked hills of Oregon spiraled into a psychological nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because you need to see the evidence we uncovered. The call came in at 3:42 a.m., the time when the world is stripped of its pretense and left raw and gray. The dispatch operator's voice was tight, clipped, lacking the usual bureaucratic boredom. She mentioned a suspicious death at the Blackwood Estate, a sprawling Victorian monstrosity perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, about 20 miles north of Astoria. In this line of work, suspicious death usually means a domestic dispute gone wrong or a drug deal that went south. But the Blackwood Estate was different. It belonged to Alistair Thorne, a recluse billionaire known for collecting things that most people would run away from: occult artifacts, cursed heirlooms, and macabre oddities from the darkest corners of history. My partner, Detective Sarah Jenkins, was already at the wheel of our unmarked sedan when I climbed in, shaking the relentless Oregon drizzle from my coat. The wipers slapped a hypnotic rhythm against the glass as we navigated the winding coastal roads. Sarah was tight-lipped, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She was a woman of science, a former forensic analyst who believed that every crime was a puzzle with a logical solution. I was the instinct guy, the one who looked at the shadows in the room rather than the blood splatter. Together we worked, but tonight the silence between us felt heavy, charged with an electricity I couldn't quite place. When we arrived, the scene was already a chaotic ballet of flashing red and blue lights. Uniformed deputies from the sheriff's department had taped off the massive oak front doors, and the jagged beams of flashlights cut through the fog rolling in off the ocean. Sheriff Miller met us at the entrance. He was a good man, tired, with lines etched deep into a face that had seen too many damp winters. "It's a bad one, Detective," Miller said, handing me a pair of latex gloves. "Not messy, just wrong." "Divine wrong," I said, snapping the gloves on. "You'll see. He's in the gallery. And Detective, watch your step. The air in there, it feels heavy." The gallery was a cavernous hall at the back of the house, windowless and climate-controlled to preserve the artifacts. Glass cases lined the walls, holding shrunken heads, rusted torture devices, and ancient manuscripts. In the center of the room, sitting in a high-backed velvet armchair, was Alistair Thorne. He wasn't slumped over. He was sitting upright, his hands gripping the armrest so tightly that his fingernails had torn through the fabric. But it was his face that stopped me dead in my tracks. His eyes were wide, bulging, frozen in a stare of absolute, unadulterated terror. His mouth was open in a silent scream that seemed to vibrate in the still air. There was no blood, no bullet wound, no knife. "Heart attack?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside the body, her voice wavering slightly. She pulled out her penlight and checked his pupils, fixed and dilated. "Maybe," I muttered, scanning the room, "but people don't usually die of heart attacks looking like they just saw the gates of hell open up." That was when I noticed the empty pedestal directly in front of Thorne's chair. A small glass case had been shattered, the shards glittering on the Persian rug like diamonds. A placard on the pedestal read, "The Amulet of Weeping Sorrows, 14th century, cursed." "The amulet is gone," I said, pointing. Sarah stood up, brushing off her knees. "Robbery? Scared the old man to death and took the prize?" "Look closer," I whispered. On the floor, amidst the shattered glass, there was a dusting of something. Not dust. It was a fine, reddish powder. I squatted down, careful not to disturb it. It smelled faint, metallic, like copper and old blood.
"Forensics needs to bag this immediately," I ordered a nearby deputy. "And get a dusting on those glass shards. If the killer broke the case, they might have cut themselves." We began the grid search. The room was sealed tight. The only door, the one we entered, had been locked from the inside. The housekeeper, a trembling woman named Elena, had used the master key to enter when Thorne didn't come down for dinner. I walked over to the corner where she was sitting with a paramedic, a shock blanket draped over her shoulders. "Elena," I said softly, crouching to her eye level. "I'm Detective Holloway. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw." She looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. She crossed herself. "It was the curse, sir. He brought it home 3 days ago. The seller told him, 3 nights. If you possess the amulet for 3 nights, the weeping woman comes to take it back, and she takes your soul with it." "We don't deal in curses, Elena," Sarah interjected gently but firmly. "Did you see anyone? Hear anything?" "I heard him screaming," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain pounding on the roof. "But not like a man in pain, like a man disappearing. And then, silence. When I opened the door, the air was freezing, and he was just sitting there." I stood up and looked back at the corpse. The air was cold, unnaturally so for a house with central heating. I checked the thermostat on the wall. It was set to 70 degrees, but I could see my breath misting in front of me. "Sarah," I called out, "check the HVAC logs. See if there was a malfunction." As the crime scene unit, CSU, photographers began flashing their blinding lights, capturing Thorne's horrific expression for the files, I walked around the perimeter of the room. I was looking for the anomaly. In a locked room scenario, there is always a trick. A hidden panel, a vent, a window latch tampered with. But the walls were solid stone. The vent covers were screwed tight with security bolts. Then I saw it. High up in the corner, a small, blinking red light. A security camera. "Sheriff," I barked, "I need the footage from that camera. Now." 20 minutes later, we were in the security office, a cramped room filled with monitors. The head of security, a burly ex-Marine named Kincaid, was typing furiously on a keyboard. He looked as shaken as the housekeeper. "I didn't see anyone enter the room, Detective," Kincaid said, sweat beading on his forehead. "I've been staring at these screens all night. Play it back. From 9 p.m., I commanded. We watched the grainy black and white footage. Alistair Thorne was sitting in his chair, holding the amulet, a large, jagged red stone on a silver chain. He was examining it with a magnifying glass. He looked calm. 9:14 p.m. Thorne looks up sharply. He stares at the corner of the room, the corner blind to the camera. 9:15 p.m. Thorne stands up. He drops the magnifying glass. He begins to back away, his hands raising in a defensive posture. He is talking to someone, but there is no audio. 9:16 p.m. The camera glitches. Static tears across the screen for 3 seconds. When the image returns, the glass case is shattered, the amulet is torn, and Thorne is dead in the chair. "Rewind," Sarah said, leaning in close to the monitor. Frame by frame, right before the glitch. Kincaid tapped the keys. The image froze. Thorne was backing away. "There," Sarah pointed. "Look at the reflection in the glass case to the left." I squinted. The resolution was poor, but in the reflection of the neighboring display case, there was a shape. It wasn't human. It looked like a dark, amorphous cloud, hovering about 6 feet off the ground. And inside that cloud, 2 faint, glowing points of light. Eyes. "That's a trick of the light," Kincaid muttered, but he didn't sound convinced. "A lens flare." "Lens flares don't have shadows," I said, pointing to the floor in the reflection. "The dark mass cast a shadow. We had a dead body, a missing artifact, a locked room, and a suspect that looked like a puff of smoke." I turned to Sarah. "We need to process the whole house. If someone stole that amulet, they couldn't have gone far. Lock down the perimeter. No one leaves. Not the staff. Not the family."
The family consisted of Thorne's son, Julian, and his daughter-in-law, Clara. They were staying in the guest wing. We found them in the library, waiting. Julian was pacing, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. Clara was sitting on the sofa, staring at her phone. "This is ridiculous," Julian snapped as we walked in. "My father had a heart condition. He died. Why are we being treated like criminals?" "Because the item he was holding is missing, Mr. Thorne," I said. watching his reaction closely, and because the door was locked from the inside. Julian stopped pacing. The amulet? That piece of junk? He paid a fortune for it. Some scam artist in New Orleans sold it to him. Did you know about the curse? Sarah asked, notebook ready. Julian laughed, a harsh barking sound. The curse. My father loved that garbage. He thrived on the drama. He probably staged the whole thing to scare the staff and then had a coronary. And where is the amulet now? I asked. How should I know? Maybe he swallowed it, Julian sneered. Clara looked up. Julian, stop it. She turned to me. He's upset. Alistair was difficult. He threatened to write Julian out of the will last week, said he didn't appreciate the mystical arts. Motive, the oldest one in the book, money and spite. Where were you both between 9 and 9:30 p.m.? Sarah asked. In our room, Clara said quickly, watching a movie. Can anyone verify that? No, Julian said, because we were in our room. I left Sarah to grill them further and stepped out into the hallway. The house felt oppressive. The shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. I needed to clear my head, so I walked back toward the gallery. The CSU team was packing up the body. As they wheeled the gurney past me, the body bag shifted. A hand flopped out from under the zipper. Alistair Thorne's rigged hand. And on his palm, distinct against the pale skin, was a symbol drawn in that same reddish powder. A circle with a line through it. Stop, I ordered. The coroner, Dr. Evans, halted. What is it, detective? Did you see this mark? I pointed. We just noticed it when we lifted him, Evans said. We photographed it. I leaned in close. The powder wasn't just on the surface. It had slightly burned the skin, causing a chemical reaction. That's not a curse, I whispered to myself. That's chemistry. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the symbol. I sent it to a contact of mine at the FBI's art crime team, a guy named Agent Miller who knew more about occult symbols than any warlock. While I waited for a reply, I went back to the HVAC log Sarah had pulled. The system showed a massive spike in energy usage at 9:15 p.m., the exact moment of death. Specifically, the dehumidifiers in the gallery had kicked into overdrive, dropping the humidity to near zero in seconds. Why? Dry air preserves artifacts, but a sudden drop like that creates static electricity. My phone buzzed. Agent Miller. Text. Symbol is alchemical, means purification by fire. But Halloway, be careful. That amulet, it's not just a rock. It's rumored to be made of cinnabar, mercury sulfide, toxic if handled improperly. If heated, it releases mercury vapor. Mercury vapor. It causes hallucinations, paranoia, tremors, and eventually death, but not instant death, not like this. I went back to the library. Sarah was looking frustrated. Julian and Clara were stonewalling. We need to search your room, I announced. You have a warrant? Julian challenged. I have a dead body and probable cause, and since this is a potential biohazard scene now, I don't need to ask politely. We're looking for the amulet, and if it's leaking what I think it's leaking, you're all in danger. That shut him up. We searched the guest wing, nothing. We searched the staff quarters, nothing. I went back to the gallery. I stood in the center of the room, closing my eyes. I tried to reconstruct the timeline. Thorne is sitting. He feels... what? Fear. Why? Because of the mercury? No, the levels wouldn't be high enough yet. I looked at the shattered glass again. The glass had fallen outward. Sarah, I said, waving her over, look at the debris field. If someone smashed the case to grab the amulet, the glass would be inside the pedestal area or scattered randomly. But most of the glass is on the rug, 3 feet away. Like it exploded from the inside, Sarah realized. Or, I said, looking up at the ceiling, like it was shattered by a frequency.
Sonic resonance. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Like an opera singer breaking a wine glass? You need massive volume for that. Or a specific frequency. Infrasound. Infrasound. Sound waves below the range of human hearing. 18.9 hertz. The ghost frequency. It causes the human eyeball to vibrate, creating visual hallucinations, gray blobs, shadows in your peripheral vision. It causes feelings of dread, sorrow, and intense fear. If someone pumped infrasound into this room, I reasoned, Thorne would have started seeing things. The shadow and the reflection, the feeling of doom. And if the glass case had a specific resonance frequency, the case shatters, Sarah finished. The amulet falls. But who took it? I asked. The door was locked. We were missing a piece. A physical piece.
I went back to the security footage. I watched the glitch again. 9:16 p.m. "Kincaid," I said to the security chief who was hovering in the doorway, "is this system hardwired or Wi-Fi?" "Hardwired, sir. Closed circuit. No outside access." "Then the glitch wasn't a hack," I said. "It was electromagnetic interference. A power surge." I looked at the walls of the gallery. Solid stone. Except the fireplace. A massive, ornate fireplace that had been sealed up years ago. I walked over to it. The grate was welded shut. I shone my flashlight through the gaps. Darkness. But then, a glimmer. Something metallic was wedged up the chimney. "Get me a crowbar," I yelled. It took 2 deputies 10 minutes to pry the grate open. Ash and soot poured out, choking us. I reached up into the flue, my gloved hand brushing against cold brick, until I felt it. A thin, high-tensile fishing line. I pulled. It was heavy. Slowly, descending from the chimney darkness, came a small rubber-lined bag, and inside the bag, glowing dull red in the flashlight beam, was the amulet. "It never left the room," Sarah whispered. "Someone fished it out," I said, examining the setup. "There's a mechanism up there, a pulley system. But the chimney is sealed from the roof," Kincaid said. "I checked it myself. Then it goes somewhere else," I said. "We followed the chimney schematic. It didn't go to the roof. It diverted to the room directly above the gallery. The master bedroom. Alistair Thorne's bedroom." We raced upstairs. The bedroom was empty, untouched, but the fireplace here was open, and sitting next to the fireplace was a high-end audio setup, subwoofers, amplifiers, and a frequency generator. "The ghost frequency," I said, pointing to the dial. It was set to 19 hertz. "Someone murdered him with sound and terror," Sarah said, disgusted. "They drove him insane from the floor above, shattered the case, and then used a preset rig to hoist the amulet up the chimney so it would look like it vanished into thin air." "But who?" I asked. "Who has access to the master bedroom?" "Only family," Kincaid said. "And me." I turned to look at Kincaid. He didn't blink, but his hand drifted imperceptibly toward his belt. "Where were you at 9:15, Kincaid?" I asked, my hand moving to my holster. "I told you. Security office. Alone. Yes. And you said the system is hardwired. So how did you know the camera glitched if you were watching the monitors? You said, it's a trick of the light, before we even pointed out the shadow." Kincaid froze. "You knew what we were looking for," I said, stepping closer. "You said the rig. You wanted the amulet. Why, a buyer?" Kincaid smiled, a cold, predatory grin. "Do you know what that stone is worth on the black market, detective? It's not just cinnabar. It's a reliquary. Inside the stone, there's something else." He moved fast, faster than a man his size should. He kicked the heavy oak table between us, sending it crashing into my legs. I went down hard. Sarah drew her weapon, shouting, "Police, don't move." Kincaid dove for the window. He smashed through the glass, rolling onto the balcony roof, and dropping into the rainy darkness of the garden below. "Call it in," I yelled, scrambling to my feet. Suspect fleeing south. We sprinted downstairs, bursting out into the storm. The wind was howling now, whipping the trees into a frenzy. We saw a shadow sprinting toward the cliffs. "He's heading for the cove," I yelled over the wind. "He has a boat."
We chased him through the muddy grounds, slipping and sliding. My lungs burned. The rain was blinding. We reached the edge of the cliff just as Kincaid reached the small motorboat moored at the private dock below. He was fumbling with the rope. He had the amulet in his hand, clutching it like a lifeline. "Kincaid!" I screamed, leveling my Glock. "It's over." He looked up at us, 50 feet above him. He laughed, a manic sound carried away by the gale. He raised the amulet. "You can't stop it," he screamed. "The buyer is waiting." He pulled the starter cord. The engine roared to life. But then, something happened. Something I still can't explain to this day. As Kincaid turned the boat toward the open sea, a massive wave, seemingly out of nowhere, surged up. It wasn't just water. The way the moonlight hit the spray, it looked like a shape, a towering, draped figure. The boat was lifted, tossed like a toy, and smashed against the jagged rocks of the cliff face. There was a sickening crunch of fiberglass and bone. The engine sputtered and died. We scrambled down the treacherous path to the dock. Kincaid was lying on the rocks, broken.
The amulet was gone, washed away into the dark, churning Pacific. He was still breathing, shallow, rattling gasps. I knelt beside him. Who was the buyer, Kincaid? He looked at me, his eyes wide, filled with the same terror I had seen on Alistair Thorne's face. Not a buyer, he wheezed. A keeper. He died right there, the rain washing the blood from his face. The case was closed, technically. Kincaid was the murderer. The forensics matched. His fingerprints were on the audio equipment. The pulley system had his DNA on the line. He had used infrasound to induce a cardiac event in an old man with a weak heart, stealing the artifact to sell. But as we drove back to the station the next morning, the sun breaking weakly through the clouds, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had missed something. I sat at my desk, writing the report. Sarah was across from me, sipping bad coffee. "We got him," she said. "Good work, Mark." "Yeah," I said. "Science. Logic. Infrasound. Exactly. No ghosts. No curses." I opened the evidence bag containing the photos from the scene. I flipped to the picture of the symbol on Thorne's hand, the chemical burn. Agent Miller had said it meant purification by fire. Then I looked at the autopsy report again. Toxicology. He was clean. No drugs. But there was a footnote I had missed in the chaos. Trace amounts of digitalis found in the victim's hair follicles. Digitalis. Foxglove. It causes heart arrhythmias. If administered in small doses over a long period, it weakens the heart. It makes a heart attack inevitable if the victim is subjected to extreme stress. Kincaid didn't use poison. He used sound. So who was poisoning Alistair Thorne for months before the night he died? I pulled up the family files again. Julian Thorne, the son. I looked at his financial records. He was broke, deeply in debt, but his father threatened to write him out of the will only last week. Julian needed his father dead before the will was changed. But Julian didn't have the technical know-how for the infrasound rig. That was Kincaid. Were they working together? I pulled up the phone records. No calls between Julian and Kincaid. But there were calls. Dozens of them. Between Kincaid and Clara, Julian's wife. My stomach dropped. Clara. The quiet one. The one on the phone. I grabbed my coat. "Sarah, let's go. We need to bring Clara Thorne in." "Why?" "Because Kincaid was the hired gun," I said, rushing to the door. But Clara was the architect. She was poisoning the old man with foxglove tea, weakening him. She seduced the security chief to stage the curse, to finish the job. She gets the inheritance. Julian gets the money. And she gets rid of the difficult father-in-law. We sped back to the Blackwood Estate. The sheriff's deputies were gone. The tape was fluttering in the breeze. We banged on the door. No answer. I kicked it open. Police. Silence. The house was empty. We ran to the guest wing. The closets were bare. Drawers emptied. On the bed in the guest room, there was a note. It was handwritten on elegant stationery. "Detective Holloway, you are a smart man. You figured out the sound. You figured out the chimney. But you forgot the most important rule of magic. Misdirection. While you were chasing the hired help down the cliff, we were packing." Don't bother looking for us. The world is a big place, and we have enough money now to disappear. P.S. The amulet wasn't lost in the ocean. Kincaid never had the real one. I swapped it out of the bag before he ran. The curse isn't in the stone, detective. The curse is greed, and we are very, very cursed. Clara. I stood there, staring at the note. They were gone. Kincaid died for a fake. Alistair died for a rock, and the real monsters drove away in a luxury sedan while we were watching the waves. I walked to the window and looked out at the ocean. The water was calm now. Sarah came up beside me, reading the note over my shoulder. She swore softly. "We'll find them," she said. "Interpol, FBI, we'll put out a bolo." "Maybe," I said, "but look at this." I pointed to the bottom of the note. There was a smudge, a reddish smudge. I touched it. It was powder. "She touched the real amulet," I said, "to pack it." "So?" "Agent Miller said the cinnabar releases mercury vapor if heated," I said, a dark smile forming on my face. Clara said she took the real one. Where would she hide a priceless tennis ball-sized red stone to get it past airport security or customs? She'd have to seal it, Sarah said. Maybe inside a vacuum flask? Or